Throughout the tortuous tapestry of human history, the word evil has been a damning epithet, a brand seared upon the memory of the most brutal, merciless, and profoundly feared individuals to ever cast their shadows upon the earth. Some wore the gilded crowns of emperors, their decrees dripping with the blood of innocents. Others donned the stark, utilitarian military uniforms of generals, orchestrating slaughter on an industrial scale. Yet regardless of their attire or station, all left behind indelible crimson trails of death, destruction, and a lingering terror that haunts the collective consciousness. Among this grim pantheon stands one of the most terrifying warlords the world has ever known, a man whose name alone could curdle blood, who brought two mighty, centuries-old Roman empires to their trembling knees, and who carved his legacy into the very bones of a ravaged Europe. His name was Attila the Hun. Born around the year 406 AD, Attila emerged into a tribal world steeped in perpetual conflict and the raw struggle for survival. His cradle was the harsh, unforgiving steppes of Central Asia, a vast, wind-swept expanse that bred a hardy and relentless people. The Huns were an enigma to the settled civilizations of Europe, feared horsemen whose origins were shrouded in myth and whose lightning-fast raids were the stuff of nightmares. They were nomadic warriors, appearing as if from nowhere, striking with devastating ferocity and vanishing as quickly as a desert mirage, leaving only desolation in their wake. From his earliest youth, Attila was indoctrinated into the brutal Hunnic ethos. Strength was the sole guarantor of survival, and mercy was a contemptible, even fatal weakness. He absorbed these lessons well, demonstrating a precocious cunning and a ruthless ambition that saw him rapidly ascend through the ranks of Hunnic warrior society. Following the death of his uncle Rugala, who had done much to unify various Hunnic tribes, Attila and his elder brother Bleda became joint rulers of the Huns around 434 AD. But Attila's soul harbored no desire to share power. For a decade they ruled together, but the partnership was uneasy. In 445 AD, Bleda was mysteriously killed. Many contemporary and later chroniclers pointed the finger of fratricide directly at Attila. By that year, he stood alone, the sole, undisputed Khan of a vast, predatory, and ever-hungry Hunnic Empire. What followed was a reign of terror that eclipsed almost anything Europe had previously endured. With an iron grip on his unified tribes, Attila first turned his predatory gaze eastward, launching invasion after devastating invasion into the Eastern Roman Empire. He spearheaded brutal campaigns in 441 to 443 AD and again in 447 AD, penetrating deep into the Balkans and Greece. Cities like Nisus, modern-day Niš, Serdica, Sofia, and Marcianople were not merely conquered, they were systematically pillaged, their populations subjected to wholesale massacre or dragged away into slavery, their ancient walls razed to the ground. His demands for tribute were not modest. They were extortionate, hundreds, then thousands of pounds of gold annually, vast swaths of Roman territory south of the Danube, and humiliating terms of respect. The Eastern Roman Empire under Theodosius II, weakened by internal strife and unable to field armies capable of decisively defeating the Hunnic cavalry, repeatedly complied. Their treasury bled dry. But peace purchased from Attila was always a fragile, temporary affair, a mere pause for the Hunnic war machine to rearm and for its master to conceive fresh demands. His ambitions, far from sated, only grew more voracious. Having extorted the East to the brink of collapse, Attila then pivoted west, formulating new, audacious demands upon the Western Roman Empire. The most infamous of these was his claim to the hand of Honoria, the Emperor Valentinian, the third sister, in marriage. Honoria, in a desperate bid to escape an unwanted betrothal, had allegedly sent her ring to Attila, a gesture he cynically interpreted as a marriage proposal, demanding half of the Western Empire as her dowry. When Rome predictably refused this outrageous ultimatum, Attila had his casus belli. In 451 AD, he invaded Gaul, modern-day France, with an immense multi-ethnic army, purportedly numbering in the hundreds of thousands, a coalition of Huns and their subjugated Germanic allies. The resulting clash at the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, where the Roman general Aetius forged a desperate alliance with the Visigoths and other Germanic peoples, was one of the bloodiest and most desperate conflicts in ancient history. Though Attila was technically repelled, his forces remained largely intact and formidable, and the psychological damage inflicted upon Roman morale was immense. He returned the following year, 452 AD, this time plunging into northern Italy, ravaging cities like Aquileia, which he razed so thoroughly its site was later hard to find, Milan and Pavia, causing widespread famine, plague, and utter panic that reached the gates of Rome itself. Attila wasn't merely a conqueror in the traditional sense. He was a symbol of unstoppable, almost elemental destruction, a living apocalypse to the terror-stricken Romans, many of whom genuinely believed he was the flagellum Dei, the Scourge of God, sent as divine punishment for their sins. The mere rumor of his approach was often enough to cause entire towns to surrender without a fight, their inhabitants fleeing in terror. Survivors, when there were any, spoke of entire communities put to the sword, captives tortured with unimaginable cruelty or enslaved, and thriving cities reduced to smoldering ashes. He did not seek to build, to govern, or to integrate. His purpose appeared to be to shatter, to plunder, and to instill a paralyzing fear. Yet for all his battlefield ferocity and the vast devastation he unleashed, Attila did not meet his end in glorious combat. He died anticlimactically in bed on his wedding night in 453 AD, following his marriage to a Germanic princess named Ildiko. Some contemporary accounts claim he suffered a severe nosebleed or burst blood vessel and choked on his own blood in a drunken stupor. Others whisper of assassination by his new bride, though concrete evidence for this remains elusive. His burial, as described by the historian Gordanes, was as dramatic and shrouded in myth as his life. His body was reportedly placed in a triple coffin of iron, silver, and gold, symbolizing his martial might and the vast plunder he had accrued. The slaves who dug his grave and interred his treasures were then summarily executed to ensure its location remained an eternal secret, a final testament to the dread he inspired. To his enemies, the Romans and the peoples whose lands he despoiled, Attila was an unmitigated monster, ruthless, cruel beyond measure, and possessed of an insatiable bloodlust. To his own people, the Huns and the allied tribes who rode under his banner, he was likely viewed as a heroic figure, a peerless unifier, a defender of their interests against the encroachments of settled empires, and a peerless master of war who brought them unprecedented glory and riches. His image thus remains a potent paradox, both a savage barbarian leading a horde of destroyers and a skilled military strategist and cunning diplomat who expertly exploited the divisions and weaknesses of his adversaries. What is utterly undeniable, however, is the sheer scale of death, pervasive fear, and catastrophic destruction he personally unleashed during his relatively brief but terrifying rule. In the somber, ongoing debate over who truly belongs on the grim roll call of history's most evil men, Attila the Hun's name is impossible to ignore. He transformed an obscure nomadic tribe into a terrorizing imperial force that shook the very foundations of late antique civilization. He did not merely challenge empires. He seemed to revel in their humiliation and despoliation. And though his vast predatory empire dissolved almost immediately after his death, fragmenting under the squabbling of his sons and the rebellion of subjugated peoples, the memory of Attila the Hun lives on, a dark, enduring shadow cast over Europe's most turbulent and formative past. Evil can wear many faces. Sometimes it rides on horseback with a sword dripping blood in hand, leaving nothing but ash, ruin, and lamentation in its path. Sometimes it comes not to conquer the world in a conventional sense, but to shatter it, to break its spirit. Attila the Hun did not build lasting empires. He erased them, or at least brought them to the brink of annihilation. And for that cataclysmic legacy, history remembers him not just as a formidable warlord, but as one of the most profoundly evil men to ever walk the earth. If you found this story as chilling and fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode of Most Evil Men in History. More shocking tales of power, terror, and destruction are coming soon. Thanks for watching, and remember, history doesn't forget its monsters.